Today's message from the forest, it's going to begin with a little bit of a story. And the story is taken from some experiences of my life. Where we lived was an island, and there was the Kuroshiro current, which came up from Taiwan, up the Ryogoku Islands, and up to Japan. And with this current, there were all kinds of interesting creatures and fish that used to appear in the waters around the island. So you've seen flying fish, right? You've seen documentaries. They've got kind of wings. They jump out the water and they fly for a certain number of meters and then they go back in the water again. Well, I used to catch them. I used to work on a boat in Japan, and we used to catch flying fish every morning. We used to go down there at 4:30, check out the weather, and then when all the captains had met, all the crews would jump on the boats. There were about 9 to 10 boats who went out, and then off we went out until 3, sometimes even 4 in the afternoon, when we come back with the holds either full of flying fish or empty, and rather depressing. So the flying fish boat was the Shigemaru, and between you and me, it wasn't that great. I mean, the people on it were fantastic. Shigehise was the captain, and he was a marvelous man. He took me on when other people probably wouldn't. And we had 2 other crew members. There was Yamada-san, and Yamada-san was a car salesman. And the other person was Yoshitaku-san. Now, he was the closest you could possibly get to looking like a pirate from the Far East. He had a patch over one eye. He wore a bandana. He was extremely muscly. But the strange thing is, he was a trained pastry chef and trained in Switzerland. And so there we were, the used car salesman, the pastry chef, and me sitting in the East China Sea on the Shigemaru, the worst performing flying fish boat in the fleet from Amber Port. Now, our favourite place to go to fish was in front of the Japanese space station, which was kind of fun because I could look at all the rockets ready to take off while I was waiting for the nets to be pulled in. And so what we used to catch was the often surprising thing. We used to catch, of course, lots of flying fish. Whole nets of flying fish, of course, because that's what we were there for. Amongst all the flying fish and the shira were yellow and blue type fish. They were quite large. I think they're called dolphin fish, and they would eat flying fish, and they would always come up as well. But anything that came up in the nets, which wasn't these 2, pretty much we would throw them immediately back. Seahorses were quite common. They would immediately, as soon as we saw them, they go straight back in. We even had a baby giant turtle, and it would be very common to have pufferfish. And this is what we're talking about right now, because pufferfish actually hold the key to understanding everything around me now. Your body, my body, and even how the universe works. So the pufferfish is well known in Japan as fugu, and people eat fugu, which shouldn't sound too strange. But when I tell you that parts of the fugu has a neurotoxin which is 1,200 times more poisonous than cyanide, you'd probably be thinking, I don't think I'm going to eat that. So all of the neurotoxin is actually in the ovaries and liver, but there are traces in other parts of the fish and even in the muscle area. So it's pretty dangerous to prepare this fish, which is why it's got pretty stringent regulations. I have actually been in a restaurant and eaten it, and the meat came out in slices, and they were placed in the shape of a chrysanthemum. Now, a chrysanthemum is a very common flower to be found in a funeral. Now, a plate of fugu will set you back something like 22,000 yen, something like $200. So what happens if you have the neurotoxin? You know it because your lips go numb, and then your body will slowly go into paralysis, and then it will slowly shut down the different organs. And all the time that this is happening, which would be several hours, you would be totally conscious. So what has a pufferfish got to tell us about the nature all around me? Well, the key is what it does. So when the pufferfish comes up on the net, it's actually blue and quite smooth. It's got big bulging eyes, and so it looks really beautiful and kind of cute, like a goofy kind of cute. It then lands on the deck and it changes colour. It goes almost bright yellow, and these very large spikes spring up a bit like a porcupine, and it bounces around on the deck. Now, what it's doing, it's expanding itself, and it actually contains water that it's expanded itself with water inside, but it could contain air, but usually it's water. And it's this dramatic transformation of contraction and expansion that really caught my attention all those years ago when I was working in the East China Sea. Because this expansion and contraction that is so visible in a pufferfish is actually part of our natural world, happening everywhere at every time. Expansion and contraction is part of the very movement of the universe. We just have to go and look at how a star is formed, how perhaps the universe was formed, the Big Bang, the cycle of day and night, the beating of our hearts, the moving of our blood. Expansion and contraction is in everything. Now, this expansion and contraction have other words in ancient China, and these words were yin and yang. So this is the fantastic understanding of how everything works with yin and yang. So if you're going to treat anyone in their body, you've got to think about, where is it contracting? Is it expanding? Is there movement? If there isn't, there's a problem there. And you have to bring back the movement of expansion and contraction. This is one of the foundations of ecological guasha. So, of course, if you want to know more, you've got to study a bit more about what this really means and how you can use this information to really understand what you're doing. Because if you don't really understand even the basics, for example, of expansion and contraction and what that means about health and ill health, then how are you expected to get people better?